Hey y'all, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Wildflower T, and I got a juicy one for you today. For those of you who do not know, this past week the Chrisleys sat down and did a Chrisley podcast crossover. This included Todd, Julie, Savannah, and yes, Lindsay Chrisley. Now, I probably don't have to say why this is a big deal, but they have not sat down together publicly in several years, and throughout those years there has been a lot of family drama. We're talking about estrangements, affairs, divorces, tons of lies, and now even a trial. Throughout all of that, there has been a lot of unanswered questions, and in this Chrisley crossover, they cover it all. If you haven't got to watch it yet, don't worry, because your girl has you covered. We're going to get into every single one of the podcast episodes. There is a lot to talk about and break down, but if you would like to see these in full for yourself, of course, as always, they will be linked in the description below. Part 1 was done on the Convos podcast, and for those of you who don't know, that is Kel Lowry and Lindsay Chrisley's podcast together. And let's just say the Convos podcast is doing very well in the podcast atmosphere. It has completely surpassed Chrisley Confessions, and they do make a couple little jokes about that in this podcast. But I would also say out of all the episodes that the Chrisleys done, this one was the most emotional and very serious.
I am nervous because this is the first time that anyone has heard from all of us together since 2017. It's scary because we are doing this publicly, but it also feels good to be doing it on our own terms.
We have taken direction from a million different people telling us a million different ways of handling things and a million different versions to repeat. This is an opportunity not only for us as a family to continue to heal, but it's an opportunity for all of the listeners out here who have similar issues that have transpired in their family, and there are many.
Theirs just aren't publicized for the world to see.
Exactly.
Which is the difference.
Exactly.
From the very beginning of episode 1, you can tell that it is set in a more serious tone. And this sets the mood for the whole podcast, except for at the very end, they do a little bit that I believe was added in for comedic relief. But I found it interesting that Lindsay Chrisley is actually the one who came up with the idea to do this Chrisley crossover. Allegedly, she reached out to the rest of the Chrisley family and told them that she wanted to sit down and be very open and transparent with the public about where they're at, where they've been, and what they're doing in order to heal and reconcile as a family, which they do get into a lot of that. I've had my suspicions for a while that they've been working on things as a family, which, don't get me wrong, is incredible, because whether you like or dislike the Chrisleys, seeing a family being broken apart is always heartbreaking in my opinion. But the reason I had this suspicion is because some of you may recall that Lindsay did take the stand during the Chrisley trial, and essentially she did try to defend her family against some of the claims that were being put out there in court. Let's just say she got real defensive, so much so that the judge had to tell her to chill out or she was going to have to get off the stand. She also did post a few things over on Instagram, which I will pop up on the screen for you guys, and all of it was very supportive when it comes to her family and what they are currently going through. Then at the end of the summer, she did mention the alleged sex tape and how there's a lot that the public doesn't know about that situation. She stated that she no longer believed that her father or her brother had anything to do with that situation, which for those of you who have followed the family for a long time, you know that that is a huge turnaround from where Lindsay has been for the past several years. Whatever information she did get obviously was enough to give her the closure she needed to start working on the damage that had been done between her and her family. Speaking of the damage in this family, that is a huge talking point in this first episode. They all open up a great deal about the regrets that they have as a family and as individuals when it comes to the mistakes and choices that they have made.
Lindsay did things that said things that should not have ever been done or said. I perpetuated that by stepping outside of being the parent.
That's right. Hurt people. But I think sitting here today, it's for hurt people that hurt people. Our situation is more common than it's not common. Mm-hmm. And people need to hear it. People need to hear the true story of what our life has been.
You went through this divorce on your own.
Yes.
You had no parental are family support. You have no idea how many times that I wanted to pick up that phone and call you. I let my pride stand in the way of me doing it.
I feel like I grew up with y'all.
You did. We grew up together.
Y'all were very different with them than you were me. Me before therapy would have said, why did y'all do this with me, but not make those same mistakes with them?
Our relationships have been so rocky because it was about this picture perfect image. So there was so much hiding from each other of, I don't want to disappoint. It was all about a competition that when in reality we're sitting here, I'm 25 years old, and I really don't feel like I know you.
Y'all, let me tell you, this was the realest conversation I believe the Chrisleys have ever shared with the public. And it shed a major light on the reality of what their life has been like. Not what we see on TV, but the actual reality. To hear Savannah say that she is 25 years old and she does not know her own sister, she doesn't feel like she knows her own sister, that is deep. As these episodes continue, you will kind of see a pattern here. But with that being said, I do think it takes a lot of strength to get on camera and share such personal information about your life. They had to 100% accept the fact that by sharing their story and opening up and being real, that mask that they have worn for years was going to be completely off. And while there are some people out there that will appreciate that, there are a lot of others out there who will use these podcasts to further look down at the Chrisleys for the mistakes and choices that they have made in their life. In my personal opinion, due to everything that the family has been through, whether you believe that it was self-inflicted or done because of someone else, now was the perfect time for them to sit down and be real and open and raw about it all. Because number one, let's be real about it, we don't know what the future holds for the Chrisleys. Even their supporters today have a lot of questions. They are not blind to the tabloids, the media, the trial, everything. And a lot of it doesn't add up with what the Chrisleys have said publicly and what we see on the show. So again, I know it's going to piss some people off, but I actually do have to give them a little kudos for the fact that they are saying, you know what, screw it. It's time that we just sit down and be honest. Not only for themselves as a family, but also for those who have followed them and their story for years. That is more than I can give a lot of other reality TV stars out there or celebrities who never acknowledge anything that is put in the spotlight.
Why do it now? Because now is my time. I was never going to do this based off of a network telling me to do it or someone else telling me to do it. I always knew the time would come. I always held on to that hope, and my faith never wavered in that.
It's easy for us to sit and say, social media is a smokescreen, when we've been guilty of using it as a smokescreen. Anybody listening to this podcast, as you said, our story has gotten ugly at times, and it has been so hard, and it's been great and beautiful at times.
And we've been manipulated by outside sources as well.
Absolutely,
That's the main
100%.
thing.
The devil had a seat at our table.
It does feel like a sense of relief to be able to do this and to be able to move forward and not feel like we're publicly hiding behind anything from the public.
Part 2 of the podcast was done on the Chrisley Confession podcast, which is Todd and Julie's show. And for the listeners of that show, you know that they are very much faith-based and they talk about their personal struggles and the lessons that they have learned through those struggles. One of the main talking points is that Lindsay felt like the black sheep of the family. And because she felt that way, it created jealousy, resentment, and anger towards the rest of the family members. I do want to play a couple of clips from that conversation because I found it to be highly interesting. But again, you guys, if you follow this family to any extent or are interested in the Chrisleys, I do recommend that you go watch these podcasts for yourself. There is just so much context here and they cover a lot of ground.
You start believing your own philosophy. You start believing in the garbage that you're churning in your mind, that Satan has stepped in and said, oh, well, where's your dad now? You're sitting here by yourself. Your dad loves Savannah more than he loves you.
You and Savannah have had your moment. I think that it also has to do with personalities.
We could be going at each other, but then, hey, you want to go to lunch 5 minutes later? Like Lindsay said, ask anyone. Anyone's going to say that I'm your favorite. That's not true. It's just there are ways that we connect emotionally. Even whenever you and I went through that time of not speaking, it was like 6 months, but we would show up and we would film and no one ever knew.
When the cameras went off?
When the cameras went off.
She went her way, I went mine.
Which looking at it, it's like, that's some real
That's
twisted.
some psycho stuff.
Yeah, it's twisted.
It really is. With Chrisley Knows Best, like we've touched on before, yes, it's reality. But there's only so much reality. We would say things that they didn't want us saying, and then they would try to get us to say something different.
As great as the show has been in so many ways, there's also been challenges that have been presented that people just might not understand looking from the outside. The show that they're watching for 22 minutes and think that that is the entirety of what is going on. And that's just, that in itself is not reality.
That's right.
Lindsay isn't wrong here. I think we as the audience do sometimes tend to forget that although we do see maybe 20 minutes out of their day, or more realistically, 20 minutes out of their week that the show has just clipped together for one day, it can feel like you really know the family, especially if you have followed for years. But the truth is there's so much that doesn't get caught on camera or that producers don't put into the show. And when it comes to struggles and issues in life, we automatically jump to the conclusion that because they are celebrities or reality TV stars, their lives are easier and they don't have the same struggles or issues that we may have. But of course, that isn't true. It doesn't matter how much money you have. We all have issues. Every human in this world has their own personal battles. The difference is because they do share so much of their life, people automatically cast that judgment more quickly than you would on the average person. And speaking of struggles, both Todd and Savannah were kind of bragging about how well they deal with issues, or better yet, not deal with issues. Because of the life they live, they've gotten really good at compartmentalizing their struggles and issues in life, and instead of dealing with them in the moment, as Savannah put it, they put them in pretty little boxes and tuck them away for a later day. And I know that from personal experience. If you don't deal with something in the moment, a lot of times you won't deal with it at all until it's literally overwhelming your life. And then at that point, you don't even know where to begin to fix it. So I did find that conversation to be a little bit interesting too, and it makes sense with some of the things we're seeing playing out right now. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts and opinions when it comes to these podcast episodes. We do have one more coming up, and that is Savannah's new podcast called Unlocked. Just like everything else that we're talking about today will be linked in the description below. When it comes to this one though, were any of your questions answered, or are you left with even more questions when it comes to the Chrisleys? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, if you would like to stay in the loop with the Chrisleys or any of your other favorite reality TV stars, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and tapping the bell. That way you are notified when videos like this one go live on my channel. I appreciate you all to the moon and stars, and until the next one, bye y'all.